Hello and welcome to Young Blossom 25 Future Leaders Revealed. I'm Inga, and with me is Vaios, my co-host, today in a Calvin Klein hoodie. And we're here today with Bene Lounois. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. And she is joining us for a conversation about future leadership to share her perspective on multi-generational workplaces. A very warm welcome, Bene. We're very happy to have you. So you're currently the Chief Marketing Officer at Yoojo, I learned how to pronounce that name, which is a European platform that helps people book trusted providers for everyday home services, which I think is amazing. Starting from cleaning to gardening to moving to childcare. Prior to that, you spent quite some time working at companies like Google, P&G, Unilever, even Disney. Your work focuses on combining sharp strategy with bold storytelling to drive customer acquisition and sustainable growth in the category that is reinventing how Europeans think about jobbing and services at home. And through your writing and coaching, because that's also what you do, as well as you speak often about leadership, resilience, and building teams that move from polite collaboration to truly energized performance. Topics we'll dive into in this conversation. And this is what Perplexity has to say about you. So we're using AI to give us some introduction points about our guests. How accurate was it? What is it missing? What is it that is not to be found on the World Wide Web?
That is a very good question. I'm like, do I have 4 hours to answer to that? I think you said everything. Everything that you can find on my LinkedIn profile for sure. I think the stories that we tell behind our experiences and how they impact the people we are becoming today are more important. So I think I would be more interested in that as a listener. But as an intro, this is like a very good summary.
Excellent. And you're joining us today from Geneva.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Vaios and I are both in Athens, in different locations, but still in Athens. Well, fantastic. Very warm welcome. It's lovely to have you on the show. Before we
Thank
jump
you.
in, just a quick reminder for our listeners in this podcast, we're here to have conversation with future leaders to gain first-hand understanding from them about their approach to work, life, learning, progress, and equally, we will also connect that to the current leaders and expose that to the current leaders to share with them insights and provoke some conversation how we can have a multi-generational workplace that is breeding more successful leaders for the future.
Great. And I guess it's time to kick it off. Welcome, Bene. It's fantastic to have you with us. First month of the year, and we had already 2 great guests, and it's just fantastic to have you on the lineup today. So first things first, we always ask our guests to share their perspective on generational gaps and how you see all this Gen Zers issue in the workplace. What's your take?
Ooh, nice questions to start with. I think there's definitely a shift from what we knew as how to be in the workplace, to feel in the workplace, to think in the workplace. And I think what's striking me in the new generation is that they bring their whole self to work. It's not just about who am I professionally, and how can I build China wall between who I am professionally and who I am personally and never let those two worlds collide. It's more about how do I bring myself all to work and how can I be myself in the environment that I'm choosing to be in. And so this changes the way we think about managing them, engaging them, retiring, hiring them, etc. And that changes your work as a manager as well, because it's definitely not the same as what we've been told at school or by even our own managers how to manage people. So it's definitely a shift that is interesting.
Do you think this is because Gen Z is particular? Is this a statement you agree with?
I think every generation is particular because we live with different realities, we live with different experiences, and our parents' experiences are also so different. So depending on how you've been brought up and which experience you've gone through in your life, I think that's normal that we are in a way different because we've lived different realities. So I agree with the statement, I think.
You have a fantastic career track record. You were at Google So one question I always wanted to ask you is about the changes you have made professionally. What was it that drove your decision to join a few companies before joining Google? What drove you to leave Google?
I think whenever it comes to a company, the way I've been choosing things have been dramatically changing over time. I think when I started my career, I was like, I just want someone to take me. Please, I just want a job. And that was very much the intention. And then I think at the end of my studies, I was like, I want to get paid well. And that drove my decisions. And then at some point, I started thinking about actually, I'm paid well, but the environment doesn't fit me. So the way I make decision or the things that I value have very much changed over time. And so I remember when I left P&G with no plan B because it was not the environment for me. When I went into Google, I was like, oh, it's amazing. I can meet so many international people and people are passionate about things and they have a life outside of work. This is crazy. And I very much value that environment. But now that I'm more into my things, I think also about what do I want from a personal standpoint? Where do I want to live? What type of life do I want to have? And that's been driving my decision, for instance, to move from Dublin to Switzerland to find the mountains, the lake, the trains, being closer to family, etc., etc. So I think at certain point of your life, the decisions you take are very much different. What drove me to say yes to Disney, no to P&G, yes to Google, etc., was different situation and different values.
Yeah, I would like to double click on that because so you are in your 30s, so you're a millennial. And when I listen to you, I feel like I'm 47, I'm Gen X, and I find myself in exactly that same spot. So I choose today very differently versus how I was choosing, 20 years ago or 25 years ago when I started my career. A lot of that was when I find a job, it needs to be paying me well so I can pay the rent and, have a good life and travel. Then, with every job, it needs to pay better and better and better. But then at some point, you reach a point where you're like, where do I want to live? How do I want to spend my time? It seems like, so for me, it comes at the age of 47. Is it the generational thing that because of how life evolves, this generation or Gen Z, they're asking that question a lot earlier, or the question is constantly part of the decision-making process? How do you think about that?
When I look at my dad, he always tells me like, why do you change companies so often? And for me, like I stayed 6 years at Google. That's a long time. But for him, he's worked in the same company, all his life. So he doesn't really understand like, why are you guys changing all the time, moving all the time? Why not stay in the same place for a long time? And I think maybe for me, that was, I wanted the opposite. I wanted the new thing, the learning, the new experiences, etc. And yeah, and maybe new generations, they've been seeing stuff from their parents or millennials, etc. And they're like, do I want this, not want this? Maybe they've seen us, fail, be happy, be sad, etc. And there are probably like schemes or ways of thinking or decisions that they don't want to take like we did. I think for me, at least, it's very true for when I talk about career with my dad, I'm always like, he's the worst one to get advice from because he doesn't understand. But I think maybe that's true. Maybe with everything we have access to a lot of information, to social media, etc. So we might get influence as well on how we take decisions, how we learn maybe faster than our elders. So I do think it can influence for sure.
You mentioned maybe we learn faster. One of the things that there was the initiation point that Vaios and I started the whole conversation in the first place is when we were working together. So Vaios was, as he said, talent acquisition. When do you need talent acquisition? When people are leaving, you need to replace them, or you need to bring new talent. I'm like, why are people leaving? And the people who are leaving are young people. So as we were digging and doing real exit interviews, like not HR is doing exit interviews, like I was doing exit interviews, especially with young people. Bottom line, it was lack of progress, not fast enough, lack of development. So progress is not equals promote me. Progress also equals challenge me so that I have a sense of development and learning. And when we started the conversation, the one topic that comes up is, why does everything need to fit into a certain box, right? I think P&G has mastered it. I don't know how it is these days. You come in, you do 2 years this, you do 2 years this, you do 2 years this, you do 2 years this. But what took 2 years 20 years ago probably doesn't take 20 years
Yeah.
anymore. And a lot of feedback that Gen Z is giving is, look, I can learn on the job much faster than probably 20 years ago, because I have access to tools. Everything is on the cloud. You're not reliant anymore on the person who is accumulating the knowledge, and you can only get that knowledge by that person talking to you. Is that fair? Is that still up to date, that companies are still structured in a way how development and progress works, that it's not adequate anymore? And because you work with Unilever, you work with P&G, you work with Google, what's your pick, how those companies are positioned for that generation?
I think it depends on the company. I think on one side, you have companies that are what I would call more traditional, where you have also maybe older generations taking the decision for younger generation on what should be the trainings, the motivation, with a framework that was very true to them, but that is not necessarily true to now. For instance, things like assuming that you can motivate people only by raising their salary, and underestimating the impact you can have by investing on trainings, on mentoring, sponsoring, on all of those things that technically cost you less, but actually could have such a bigger impact than just a salary raise. And on the other side, I think you have companies that are trying to master that new curve, where you have more flexibility onto what you're trained on, who are your mentors, or your not just your managers. You always have like a mentor and other people you can rely on to try to kind of capture and help retain those talents, because we know how expensive it is when you hire somebody and they stay just a very short time and then they move on, and then you have to hire somebody again. And so it's, how do you have their loyalty in a way? And I think you really have two sides of the coins. Side of the coin, I think we say in English. One that is very traditional is probably missing something, or overestimating or underestimating some incentives. And the other one that is trying to get onto that wave, that new wave, not necessarily in the right way or the perfect way, etc., but at least trying. So yeah, I think it really depends on the company.
Do you think companies do enough?
Enough
To be prepared and to keep the young talent as long as they can in the company?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think in a lot of companies, we still promote managers to manager level because they are good individual contributors, and that's still the case today. And even though they don't want to be a manager, even though they will not necessarily be good managers, even though they might not have been really good ICs, but they would make excellent managers, we don't consider that. And in a lot of companies, the path to higher salaries, success, whatever, is through the manager's way. But it's not necessarily the best fit for everyone. And that's something a lot of companies don't take into account.
How would you change that, Bene? You've been through so many important multinational corporations. What would be your advice to the people that are in charge right now?
I think one thing that we always say in management training, but so rarely of us do apply it, is the listening part. So really listening and asking open-ended questions. Things like, how are you feeling today? That we don't even take the time to ask when we are in a rush. Or things like, what will make that job more exciting for you? Or what would make you stay longer, also asking them directly. Because I do think this generation is maybe more direct than we are, or that we've been accustomed to be. And we more like, so I've been in companies where it's a lot about the political game, right? So you're trying to say things, but not too transparently, because, it can be perceived a certain way. So you're like going around and around and around, where I think this new generation is more like, okay, I want this, or this is not working, or etc., which is important. If you wanna retain them, listen to them. They will tell you what they need, or what they're expecting. It doesn't mean you have to do everything, but it means that if you want to find the right formula, you have to listen.
On that communication bluntness, as I call it, they're very aware of it, interestingly. So all the Gen Zs who made it on the podcast, but equally who we interviewed, didn't make it or didn't want to come on the podcast, but shared their thoughts. They're quite aware that they're blunt, but they're not blunt or they're not criticizing for the sake of it. They want to make a point, and I think they're also overcompensating for our generation. And this is millennials equally as Gen X. We were just brought up, keep your head down and get stuff done, right? Like you're not challenging, you're not in the way challenging business decisions, but how you grow, how you progress, how, the bigger topics, not are we discussing that particular business decision on a micro level. You don't really, question, maybe is a better way to put it. Whereas, why not? It's so important for them, it seems, to understand the why.
Yeah.
They will not execute just because Bene is telling them to execute. Why? And I think the biggest topic that creates so much friction for all the wrong reasons is working from home.
Yeah.
How misunderstood, and that's to the point of listening, how misunderstood that is. All the companies believe that Gen Z wants to work from home. They don't want to come to the office. The opposite is almost the case. They're actually looking for connections because they're so accustomed to be digitally savvy and on a screen, but they're very conscious that they need to learn things. And the best way to learn things is to also, interact with people to some extent, because not everything can be learned from cloud. So they actually want to come to work. And most of them are actually going to the office. And if I recall my time in PepsiCo, people who were in the office were the young people. It's my generation who wouldn't show up. Interestingly, what they cannot cope with and they don't understand is, if you're telling me you need to be in the office 4 days, they're like, why? Why? Because many of them started working during the COVID time, and they're like, everybody was screaming and embracing how everything is working so well, that we're so productive and so effective and so efficient working from home. Now, this is in the past. Now you have to come back to the office. And obviously, different countries, different companies take a slightly different approach. But I think there is a sentiment overall that companies are asking people to go back to the office 4 times a week. So this generation is like, explain why. Like, help me understand why. And nobody can explain why. Yeah, because it's more creative. Creative how? There can be a week where I have meetings all day, like I'm in calls all day. Why do you want me to come to the office? Well, because it's the rule. And this is what turns them off absolutely and entirely. But they're the ones who are actually a lot more in the office and are interested to be in the office. And they don't need a free sandwich or a free coffee, which I found almost mind blowing, because everywhere the discussion in the companies that is happening is like, oh yeah, but then we're losing talent because we tell them to come to the office. Yes, if you tell them,
Yeah.
but they don't have a problem to be in the office actually. What's your experience with, what are your observations on that? Tell me what to do instead of let me figure it out, or let me be the designer of how I get the work done. What's that generation like from your perspective?
I think in what you're saying, they really want freedom. They want the freedom to choose whether they want to be in the office that day or whether they don't want to be in the office that day. And I agree with you. There are days where you're just back to back and with like clients calls and outside stuff. And it doesn't make sense to be in the office, to struggle for a meeting room and to not find that meeting room and be at ease all day when you could be at home taking your back-to-back calls, which I do not recommend to have back-to-back calls, I say, but yeah, I think, and I also think when you say you had a policy of working from home 2 days a week or something like that, and suddenly you're deciding to remove it, a lot of the time, even if it's not phrased like this, there are comments about how unproductive you are when you work from home. So when you work from home, if we check the laptop stuff, people are less connected, they're more outside shopping, And so I feel like also the underlying value is, I don't trust you.
Yeah.
And that is way more difficult to integrate than something rationally explaining we're coming back to the office to be creative, be together, to have more moments of team. We've seen that working really well. But a lot of the time it's framed as I don't trust you. And I think that's a real issue here, because if you don't trust me, then in a way you're going to micromanage me as well. And when I'm in the office, it's going to be double trouble because you'll be on my back and checking everything, etc. So I feel like if it's framed around we don't trust you, we see the statistics going down, etc., and then you're also removing a freedom of mine to choose whether I want to go to the office, to live in a way by my rules, but fitting into the company's rules, then I can understand why they're like, okay, no.
Interesting. Let me switch us a bit into a different direction. Do you think this generation is set up for success to be really good leaders?
I really think they have the potential to be, but I think there are instances where they have not received the support that they needed to grow on some areas. One area in particular that come to mind is the emotional intelligence side. They've been growing into a world where I only see what I want to see. I only am exposed to what I like. And so when it comes to things I don't like, to conflict, to I don't agree with you, etc., we've lacked the ability to say, I don't agree with you, but that doesn't mean I don't respect you. I don't respect your opinion. We cannot be friends. That doesn't mean all of those things. I just don't agree with you. And I think that's the element where I know in my team I'm trying to pass this on. How do I manage my emotions? Where are my emotions actually superpowers? And where are my emotions actually hindering my capacity to access to bigger responsibilities? Because to older generations, if you are crying in the office, if you have a moment of anger in the office, all of those things make you appear as I cannot give you a project or responsibilities, you're going to crash down, which is not necessarily the case. But learning to master those emotions and this emotional intelligence, I think is something that maybe us as millennials, I would say, we are discovering. And I hope that's something we will pass on to our children, but something that maybe the Gen Z generation was not as much exposed to.
And obviously, Bene, you're managing a team of Gen Zers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's that?
It's same as what I just said. It's like a lot about how do you help them master their emotions to show up professionally in the workplace, so in a way that is going to respect both who they are and what is happening and how the workplace works. And at the same time, I feel like they're so hungry for learning, for challenges, new things. They have a capacity to think about things from angles. I'm like, whoa, I would have never thought about it that way. Or think from an AI perspective as well. They're very agile. They're very averse, and not averse, but agile to those new tools, etc. And so that makes such a difference in the way your team can be agile as a whole. But yeah, definitely, I'm trying to pass on that emotional intelligence knowledge. Yeah.
How do you see the communication skills?
I think it depends on the individuals, and it depends also which companies you're in as well. I think they're much more ready to talk about conflict as a written thing and not necessarily as a thing we speak about. Because if I'm in conflict with you, I need to have a discussion with you and face to face. And oh my God, how is this going to work? What am I going to say? It sounds stressful. But they're much more, if they have a conflict, ready to send you a message that might not be the best formulated, etc., but just to pass on what's happening for them and how they don't agree with something. So I feel like in terms of communication, they're way more versatile, let's say, in written communication. But when it comes to oral, verbal, I don't know how we call it in English, communication, that's much harder for them.
Because they cannot stand that conflict.
Yeah, I think conflict has become such a thing where if we're in conflict, you don't like me, which is not the case. We can be in conflict and still very much like each other. And you're not my friend. And there is this sense of in groups, out groups, if we're in conflict, you don't belong to my in group, you're in my out group. And suddenly we cannot be friends together, or colleagues, or working group. So yeah, I think this is the main thing, like, because we've been exposed to, and I say we because I think it's starting to be the case also for us. You're exposed to so much of what you want and what you like, etc., that people have a very different or opposite opinion. We cannot handle it anymore. It's like, what do I do with that? Whereas before we used to have debate about that diverging opinion, or we didn't agree, but we could stay good neighbors, good friends, same family members, etc. Whereas now I feel it's much more groups, like you create much more groups in society.
One comment. I was who is somebody who lives in Switzerland now. So she's Swiss, and she's having this Zine company who is basically advising companies on how they should structure campaigns for Gen Z. They're offering reverse mentoring. And she posted a post as a cry for help, lack of better way to say it, because the world is melting down. Everything is becoming so much more, unpleasant. Please, all old people out there, take care of the young people and help them through this. Which, to your point a little bit, they are so not used to, because the time they grew up in, no wars, no hunger, I mean, there are always some wars somewhere, but no big conflicts in the world, really. So it started probably to build up to where we are today. But of course, they can also be very selective through, how I scroll, how I filter what I see and what I expose myself to, plus the algorithm does then the rest for me. That beautiful world kind of starts to collapse a little bit. And now there is a lot of anxiety, insecurity. What does that all mean for me, and how am I going to face it? And there is potentially meltdown. And obviously, resilience is something that you gain through experience. Like, you cannot learn it. You cannot go to a training and say, I'm going to be more resilient after. Exactly. So it's something that comes with experience, with life, with everything. Are we overprotective of this generation? Like, are we so, over hovering, helicoptering them? Are we not just a bit, are we too nice? Are we too facilitating? Nice is the wrong word, but are we too facilitating with them?
I think that's a very good question, Inga. I don't know the answer to that. I would say that it's true that there is a sense of like we want to nurture them rather than, push them to the limits. I do think as well we've been pushed to the limits and we're like, oh, I don't want to do that again. So we're trying to maybe sometimes sugarcoat it so that it is better absorbed by them. A little bit like a candy, but is it the right move? I don't know. And you're right, you build the resilience muscle you build is very much the results of your experiences. The more, it's sad, but the more hard times you have, maybe the more resilient you're going to be because you
Yeah.
face all of those hard times. So if we do sugarcoat it and if we do protect them too much, maybe they are not going to build that resilient muscle enough. But that being said, I also think being brought up in a society where it was, if we as you're saying, if we make it like a whole planet thing, but even though we know it's not the same for everyone, but it's been so calm and peaceful when they grew up, and now there's so much uncertainty about the future and all of those, like climate anxiety, etc. I think it's a lot at the same time. So I don't know what is the best way forward. Should we be tough, give them now, or sugarcoat it? I don't know.
I guess at some point we need to find some balance. And I'm saying this because obviously you have a generation here that is willing to be in charge of everything. What I want, how I want it, when I want it, always do what they want at their own pace. On the other hand, you have, I always refer to what Irais was telling us in episode 2. You have a leadership that is outdated at all levels. So somehow, you need to find a balance between those two. And I'm not sure where this is, where we can find it, or what organizations need to do in order to get to this balance. How do you respond to that? What's your thought on that?
I think it's easy to change your leadership if you are open to doing so. But I also think the more we grow up, because I'm not thinking we're like getting older. I'm just thinking we're still growing up at whatever
No,
age.
we're still young. We're
It's
still
still
young.
young. Age is in your
We
mind.
are.
So when you grow up, I think at some point, it's true. I can already notice that you have opinions about things that are not shifting anymore, or
Mhm.
you are now opinionated about things that before you were like, I don't care, or maybe I think that, and tomorrow I think the other thing.
Mhm.
Now we have much more. There are some of those things where the opinion seems to be stuck in time or stuck in something or a specific place. And so I do think that the more you grow up, the more it's difficult sometimes to change some of those opinions. So if you do have an opinion about this is the right way forward in terms of leadership, then it's going to be very difficult to move it and to change it. But if you have a more, it's maybe not like fixed mindset, growth mindset, but if you have a more open-minded view about things that you can be wrong, then there are definitely things that you can change. It's not going to happen over time. And I do think I mess up with my team every day. Of course, there are always things I'm like, oh, should have said that, shouldn't have done that,
Yeah.
this way, etc., etc. But that's how you learn if you have this reflective, approach.
Yeah, I guess we all do mistakes, and we all ask ourselves, did I do the right thing or not each and every time?
What about the one topic that I spend quite some time on is Gen Z as consumers. So yeah, they're employees, of course, they're future leaders. Hopefully we set them up for success. That's the whole idealistic approach here, that you need to come closer to each other instead of talking about the differences. Let's talk about what do we have in common. Brings usually people closer together. And there is for sure a lot of interest. But then there is a whole, you know, Z is being defined as a target group, right? Because they are also the ones who are going to be spending more money than the previous generation. Well, is that true? I don't know. But they will be in the overwhelming majority of spending money. Now you're a CMO, you are spending a lot of time thinking about consumption, consumer, and behaviors. How is that generation in terms of their approach to brands, their approach to consumption, their approach to lifestyle? Any thoughts on this?
I think so. And there are some things I see in my team, as in, if my lifestyle's perspective, for instance, the lifestyle that I do have when I go to work is different from the lifestyle they have when they go to work. I think it's much more a casual thing on their side. For me, it's like a, casual plus, I would say. I like to like feel professional, look professional. And so we dress differently for sure. I think their approach to conception, they want to buy from brands that they do trust. They like the vibe of the brand. It's not just anymore about what the brand on appearance sells, and the value on appearance the brand sells. They want to see the brands leaving those values, that they are also the values that they're going to find when they work at that company. It's like building a whole environment. And so I feel like the values you have for brands, and when you work on, your brand's values and what we stand for, etc., is not just about what we stand for to the customer, consumer, etc., but it's what we stand for also as a place of work in a way. So how do you find those values in the place of work that you do have? Which I think is interesting, because if there are misalignments, now it's much more, this is not what I expected. Or even when you look at some, some French Instagram account come to mind, but there are some about like startup scale ups, that mess up in the background or that are really bad to their employees, and they have these big PR issues, and that nobody wants to buy from them. So I feel like they expect more from brands. Yeah.
And then
Than
it's forgiving.
yeah, maybe less forgiving. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I can relate to what you're saying. I think in general, it's a lot more ecosystem that you need to build, where they interact with your brand, and what is the experience they have. And that experience needs to be um, not the same experience, but it needs to be, the core needs to be always the same. So
And a
that,
very also personalized experience. Like something I didn't
yes,
mention is like, I don't want to be treated like customer B is being treated. I want them to know everything about me without telling everything about me, with protecting my data, with not sharing everything, but please know everything about me. So it's very complex to manage because you want to bring that personalized experience. Are they ready to share what you need to build that personalized experience is another.
Interesting. They are actually, as much as they are on social media, they're quite close, which for me was a surprise. And I discovered it because when we are interviewing people for the podcast, we're talking to people and then decide to ask them to join the podcast, we often hear notes. Like when it started, I'm like, well, maybe, our approach is not right. Maybe, maybe they're intimidated, maybe. So I started asking why not. They said, well, I don't know, potentially many people are going to see it and it's going to be public and I'm not in control. So bottom line, I'm not in control of the content,
Yeah.
right? So I say something and then it's done. Whereas wherever I post, I'm in control. I'm the curator. And if I do something stupid, it's going to be on me. It's not going to be on somebody else. So that's why they're hesitant. And then how it may potentially influence. If I say something today, it may be really stupid. And in 10 years, somebody picks it up and says, what? So there they have a long-term thinking, which I was surprised, and I'm like, well, you know what? I can respect that. That's fine. And I think we started thinking a little bit more about because company defined that Gen Z as a target group, which I think I don't think that's the way to go. Like it's for all the right and wrong reasons at the same time, because people are more connected with common interests rather than I'm 47 and you are 30, but we can still have the same passion for
Definitely.
collecting labubus. I don't know.
And when I look at my friends, I have so many friends that are in their 45s, in their 60s as well, that are twice my age. And I'm learning so much from them. And we have so much in common, even though we're like two different generations. I think
Yes.
from a marketing standpoint, it's more like, if you want to reach people on TV historically, it was like through age and gender. So a lot of the things we are dividing by still rely heavily on those elements, even though it
Yes.
might not be interesting whatsoever.
Yes. Very interesting. Vaios, any burning questions from your side?
No, I think we're great, and I think it's time for a famous by now lightning round, or not?
Are you familiar with the lightning round?
I want an explanation, maybe.
So a lightning round, it's a very simple, fast-paced question. Don't overthink the answer. They are not knowledge testing questions at all. They're more your preference questions. Your favorite chat channel. So what are you using to chat with your friends?
WhatsApp.
Social media you spend the most time on.
YouTube Shorts.
Now, you get music from.
Music from my partner's YouTube Music.
You get podcasts from.
Apple Podcasts.
Physical books or audiobook?
Physical, though I read on Kindle.
What is the one skill you would recommend Gen Z to learn?
Emotional intelligence.
What is the one skill you would recommend the previous generations to learn?
Patience.
What is your favorite podcast, if you have a favorite podcast?
The Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett.
A famous person you would like to meet?
Anything is possible. I would say famous, badass woman. Nobody comes to mind right now, but maybe Michelle Obama.
Ah, nice. Very nice. That's it. It was very nice having you on the show, Bene, getting your perspective, your thoughts, creating perspectives together. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Really a pleasure to be here. And I hope it will inspire maybe a couple of sparks along the way.
Sure.
So I had a fantastic time with you today. So I really, really enjoyed. I'm sure also Inga. Bene, you can always change your mind regarding your favorite podcast. We are here also, and we are almost everywhere, including YouTube. So for all people out there, just hit that subscribe button and follow us. Many more episodes coming up. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.